Good morning. Today we begin the book of Joshua, the first of the historical books of the Israelites. Genesis and Exodus, they're historical books as well. They're included in the first 5 books of the Bible called the Pentateuch. But these historical books, Joshua, Judges, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, 1st and 2nd Samuel, Ezra, Nehemiah, with Ruth tossed into the middle there, are not a exact chronological journey of the Israelites, going into the promised land and all of the things that happen after that, and going through, different kings, judges, and then to go to kings and faithful kings and not faithful kings, and, King David in there with, he was a very faithful king, although he was a sinner as well, we know that. But these historical books have been categorized in different ways over the many, many thousands of years they've been here. And they're divided into our Bible now, and once in a while we'll hear reference to the writings or the chronicler or the book of Kings or and so that we get referred sometimes to books or writings that we don't have. And that's fine. Like the book of Enoch is not in our Bible, and it's one that a lot of people say, well, it adds a lot. Well, yeah, and I've never read the book of Enoch, but these books give us an insight into the life of the Israelite people as God continues to lead and guide them as His called people to be on this earth and to be this light to all the nations, and how they struggle in all of that identity. And as we move into the promised land, of course, it's a new generation. None of these that had been slaves in Egypt are still alive, and they don't, not the adults anyway, and it's a new start, and it's got to be a little bit scary for them too, as well. I mean, Moses, who they've been following all these years, has just died and has been buried, and God has instructed them to follow Joshua. And so this book of Joshua is in some ways an idealized narrative, showing them as they really wished that they would be, the kind of the society, to their past, their present, their future, and their relationship with God. And of course we know their relationship with God wasn't always what it should have been, but it's a story of how this faithful leader, Joshua, he is faithful to God and encourages the people to be faithful to God. But this book is the narrative of how these Israelite people, following this faithful leader, can create a new society. I mean, they've been wandering in the wilderness, no home, and now they're going to have homes, they're going to have cities, they're going to develop into a nation. And so this is what we're going to find as we go through Joshua and then through the other historical books. The first 11 or 12 chapters of Joshua deal with the settlement into the promised land, the crossing of the Jordan and everything else that way. And then when we get into, the end of chapter 12, 13, it's kind of how the land is distributed among the different tribes of Israel. And then it concludes with just the last 2 or 3 chapters with stories of how the Israelites owe their existence to God and how God continues to be faithful to them, and just a reminder of how God led them to occupy this new land. And so chapter 1 begins with, after the death of Moses, God spoke to Joshua, and son of Nun, and he says, my servant Moses is dead. Now proceed to cross the Jordan. And so the promise is done, that none of Moses or Aaron or any of those first ones that had left will cross into the Jordan, into the Jordan. He says, every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you, as I promised Moses. From the wilderness and the Lebanon to the great river, And then verse 5, no one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall put this people in possession of the land that I swore to their ancestors. And in verse 7 again, only be strong and courageous. So there are twice in 2 verses, and then again we get to verse 9. I hereby command you, be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened or dismayed, for the Lord is with you wherever you go. So in the first 9 verses of this book of Joshua, he hears those words from God. Be strong and courageous. I will be with you. I will not leave you. I will not forsake you. I'm going to lead and guide, and I'm going to provide just as I've promised. And you know, that's got to be comforting to Joshua. He's, you know, taking over a great responsibility. And so for him to hear this promise from God that I'm going to lead, I'm going to guide, and you don't need to worry about it. You don't, I mean, I'm going to be with you against these other nations. You know, in verse 5 again, no one will be able to stand against you. And what a promise from God to the Israelites as they are coming into possession of this new land. So in verse 10, we begin. Joshua commands the officers, pass through the camp, command the people, prepare your provisions. For here we're ready to go. So, you know, they've been mourning for Moses for 30 days, as we talked about after Moses died. I think it was just yesterday, but that seems like a long time ago. But he says, prepare your provisions, because we're going to take possession of the land that God has promised to give to us. And so this, you know, the command goes to all of these people. You know, the Lord God is providing you a place of rest. He will give you this land. Your wives, your little ones, your livestock will remain on the land that Moses has given you beyond the Jordan. But, you know, all of it's going to happen. And in verse 16, they answer Joshua. I love this answer. All that you have commanded us, we will do. And wherever you send us, we will go. Now, here's what I kind of chuckle about. Just like we obeyed Moses, we will obey you. You know, only the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. You know, and that, you know, as we obeyed Moses in all things. I mean, how many times did they complain against Moses? How many times did they blame Moses? Oh, well, that was the other generation, but still, these people knew that. And these people were guilty too of you know, not always listening to Moses, or questioning him, but, you know, just as we obeyed Moses. And so it's to me, it's you know, stuff is going to still keep happening, right? We know that. Okay, so whoever, and then they say to Joshua, whoever rebels against your orders and disobeys your word, whatever you command, will be put to death. Only be strong and courageous. So the people use the same words to Joshua as God did. Be strong and courageous. Lead us boldly with confidence, you know, and this is what, you know, God is saying. Be bold and courageous, you know. Be strong, be confident, be assured, you know. Have no questions as to God's leadership. Chapter 2 begins with Joshua sending 2 spies into the city of Jericho. And this, you know, they go to the house of a prostitute. I mean, couldn't they pick somebody better than that? You know, that's what you think, but this is where they go. And the king of Jericho finds out about these spies that have come in, and he searches for them. And then he finds out, you know, that they went to her house. And she says, well, I don't know. They were here for a while, but they left. They're not here. She was hiding them. And after the searchers had left and gone and everything, she lived right on the outer wall of the city, so she used a rope and lowered them down so they could return home after they had spied out the city and found out all of that they needed to find out and tell Joshua. And so they go, and as they go, she says, when you come to take possession of the city, remember me and my family and spare us, you know. And so I think, you know, she lets them down with a crimson rope, it says. And I think about that with the blood of the lamb over the doorposts of the Israelites as the angel of death came over there, you know. But she lets them out down the city, and she hangs that cord in the window of her room that way, so that when the Israelites come, they know that this is the woman that we spare. And so the two spies go back and they tell Joshua, truly the Lord has given all the land into our hands, and the inhabitants melt in fear before us. So somehow God has put fear into them, and they know what's going to come up out and happen. So early in the morning, it says, Joshua rose, and they took all of them with them. And as they were coming to the Jordan River, God says to them, when you come to the edge of the Jordan, you will stand in the waters of the Jordan. You and, as we get to verse 11, when the soles of the feet of the priests who bear the ark and the Lord of all the earth rest in the waters of the Jordan will be cut off. So God separates the waters, just as he did the Red Sea when the Israelites were up against a hard spot. And chapter 3 ends with all of the Israelites crossing over on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan until the entire nation had crossed the Jordan into the promised land. So God is being faithful to his word to his people, and the people are coming to the possession of the new and the promised land, to a new life.